Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Believe in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots. And of course, this show is presented by FanDuel. And of course, he on the other side is my good friend and Cincinnati Bengals insider, Charlie Goldsmith. And Charlie, look, hey, first of all, great to have you. Second of all, it's great to be sitting here after the first game of the season and the Cincinnati Bengals come away with a win. As improbable as it was, I don't know that I've ever seen a more fortunate victory by a Cincinnati Bengals team in all the years I've been around this organization.
Well, there were two dropped or tipped balls that turned into picks. There were two missed kicks. There was a possession where I believe two more drops resulted in a stop for the Bengals defense, but they needed it. And it's a unit that has a long way to go on defense, especially in the offense, showed plenty of room where it has to improve as well. But what it needed even more than that was to show that they could just play a complete game where they don't get in their own way and where they even let the opponent beat themselves. That's different from what the Bengals were able to do last year, and I do see it as a sign of progress.
Was it also a sign of the luck of the Irish, Al Golden? I mean, he brought some of that with him. Look, they got a timely sack on Joe Flacco when they needed. This defense did not have the cleanest game. I thought, if anything, they improved the run defense. I thought the tackling was better. I thought the presence of B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton on the interior of the defensive line was what we had expected. I mean, if you would have told me that this interior defensive line is going to be a presence this year, I would have been maybe not. But they showed up. T.J. Slayton and B.J. Hill were the best things happening for the Cincinnati Bengals defense yesterday. And everything else just kind of fell into play. A tipped ball in the hands of Geno Stone. Go Geno. Another tip pass late in the game to secure the win for DJ Turner in his first career interception. The pieces just fell into place. But I want to get your thoughts on just the presence of the interior part of the Bengals defensive line.
Well, we've talked a lot during the offseason about things the Bengals didn't do in the offseason. They didn't get that safety. They didn't get that pass rushing defensive tackle. They could have used more guard help. But what they did do was, aside from like T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, their next biggest investments were bringing back B.J. Hill, and we're signing T.J. Slayton. T.J. Slayton was this team's biggest external free agent that they added, and that shows you the importance that they stressed on building a stronger interior of the defensive line. That's where they put their chips. That's where they put their money. That's where they put their resources after 2 years where this defense just got gashed on the ground. And again, there's some caveat here in terms of the offense they were facing, but on the whole, it was a defense that did something that they invested in itself to be able to do.
Look, I got to tell you, the defense was just battling. I wasn't having a lot of confidence, but they just kept making one play after another, then another play. And we were on the fortunate side because these two interceptions literally went off the hand of two wide receivers and Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman and end up being given to us. I mean, it was like their offensive receiver caught the ball for Geno Stone. And then another receiver caught the ball for DJ Turner. But more importantly, you and I both know the ability to produce turnovers is not the most reliable statistic. It's one that you got to have. They're hard to script. You and I both know it. But defenses have to just be more opportunistic to take advantage of stealing the ball when you have an opportunity. That's what Jesse Bates did so well during his tenure here. And if this defense is going to be one that creates turnovers, their opportunistic sort of mentality is going to have to come with a quotient of the Irish luck brought by their new defensive coordinator, Al Golden.
There was a play last year against the Browns in December where I forget the specific combination, but it got tipped at the line and then tipped off Pratt's hands and tipped off Bill Hilton's hands and it hit like six people. And then the ball hits the ground and everyone's like, oh no. And they put their hands on their head. It was one of the more embarrassing plays of the Bengals season, I believe, because guys were getting in their own way. They couldn't even do that last season. Again, signs of progress that the defense was in position to be opportunistic, showed some nice instincts. They have really been working on catching the ball, like as simple as that sounds.
Yeah.
But it's something that's very, very important, very fundamental, something that truly changes games. And their ability to make those catches was one of the biggest differences in the game.
The tip drill that we all know too well on the back end and the secondary is something you do every day in practice. It's clear that that's what the Cincinnati Bengals secondary, they deserve a lot of credit for fighting and hanging in there for 4 quarters over the course of a game that did not look like they were going to win it. In fact, let's kind of talk about some of the moments of the game. And of course, that's going to be brought to you by heroes.com. If you go to use that QR code at the bottom of the screen, that is a lifestyle and brand celebrating everyday heroes and high quality moments and functionable products. Think about this. It's the Believe in Bengal mug. How about this? Is that kind of cool there, Charlie? We got to get you
Very
one of
nice.
those because they're pretty cool. It's a tumbler that keeps your drinks hot on cold days and warm on cool days. And of course, it's got Bengals colors, of course. You can bring it to the game. But we talk about those moments in the game that I think were very important because it was really dynamic when the Cincinnati Bengals offense got off to a fast start, going right down the field and scoring on their very first drive. But in the second half, they had a net 7 yards of total offense. On their very last drive of the game, they allowed Joe Burrow to get sacked on 3 consecutive plays. And with a 1-point lead, as Joe Burrow had to do a somersault out of the end zone where it looks like he's going to get sacked for a safety. Had he gone down, Charlie, for that safety, the Bengals would have lost the lead.
Mm-hmm.
The Browns would have won the game. And it looked like Myles Garrett was taking control of this game as they flew home on the plane. Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow, they could not have felt good about the way the game ended. I'm not saying they didn't feel good about the outcome, but that moment in the game where the offense could not be productive and we could not get yards on offense had to be a growing concern as they head into week 2.
Now, I always look at kind of the nitty gritty, smaller, like what happened on these plays. And I'm not trying to assign blame, but over the course of the game, there were 2 go routes to Jamar Chase that's the Bengals' bread and butter that just weren't completed. Could the throw have been a tick more in the right direction? Could Chase have done a bit more to secure the play? Some combination of the 2. But I look at that. I look at a whole shot that they tried to T. Higgins and then a play on 3rd down, Jamar Chase cutting out that they just weren't quite like it was a matter of inches, just not sharp enough for the Bengals. So you look at Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, plays they usually make, plays that were just – they weren't way off, but they were just, again, inches. It did feel like a fine line for the Bengals offense. And I feel less concerned about it for that reason because there was that slim of a margin for error with guys that we know are usually good for it. There were some other plays. Schlesinger had a great play against Chase Brown that he blew up. You kind of tip your cap there. You tip your cap to Myles Garrett for destroying that one series later in the game. But when you look at why the plays were happening, I didn't see some big schematic or personnel issue with the Bengals offense.
Here's what I'm going to say. And I just think that this is a precursor because think about it. The defenses in the AFC North are very good defenses. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens. But one of the best of them is the Cleveland Browns. I think we need to change our mindset and understand that the Battle of Ohio is for real. That Jim Schwartz and that defense, as long as Myles Garrett is playing on it, they are going to be a tough out. I'm just telling you right now, because this guy is a future Hall of Famer. That's right. He's a game wrecker. He's a closer in every true sense of the word. But what you saw is how great pass rushers can wreck the end of games. We've seen Trey Hendrickson do this to opponents, right? Close out games for us. We saw Michael Parsons do it week 1 for the Green Bay Packers now that he's wearing that uniform. And we also saw Myles Garrett do it against us yesterday. Whenever you play against a Cleveland Browns team, they have 2 first-round picks at cornerback. They have 3 first-round picks on the defensive front. And Carson Schlesinger might as well be a first-round pick. He's the first player taken in the 2nd round of this year's draft. They have a great defensive coach. They have really good talent. And every time the Bengals play the Cleveland Browns with that collection of players, I think it's going to be that kind of game. I don't think it's ever going to be a walk away. I think there's going to be moments where the Bengals offense experience a drought, but I don't expect Higgins and Jamar Chase to combine for 5 catches and 59 yards. That's, for whatever reason, that number just doesn't sit well with me, Charlie.
What the Browns did best defensively was Joe Flacco and the offense and the game plan and the way that they limited possessions. Like, I really feel like when you really boil it down, it was a Browns offense that limited possessions, that didn't give the Bengals many chances. It felt like the Browns finished that second drive in the second quarter, and it's like, I guess it was their third drive, and it's like, that's it? Like, the half's over now? Like, but it all just drained away and slipped away without the Bengals offense really getting any chance to try to, or be able to get into any sort of rhythm. I bet they have a lot of plays on the play sheet that they had in their bag that they just ended up throwing in the trash just because they didn't get the snaps to do it. And that all added up to in just the lack of yards and lack of opportunities that the passing game had.
Was the play of the game by Joe Burrow when it looks like he's going down for a safety and he leaps out of the end zone and out of the grasp of Cleveland Brown defender, and had he been sacked for a safety, the Browns are going to take the lead. He literally saved the game by doing that front flip or whatever you call it, that somersault out of the end zone and saving. He still went down for a sack, but he saved the safety. How big of a play was that?
Well, first of all, you have to talk about that being Zach Taylor's worst mistake of the game and one of his worst situational mistakes that I can remember from the last couple seasons. The idea to call a true drop back pass in a forever situation like that with an extremely low conversion rate for a passing game that hasn't gotten anything going all game, facing a Browns defensive line that had just gotten you twice. What I was expecting was a little screen to give Brian Rico some more breathing room. But it flipped completely on its head. Bad situational football by Zach Taylor, but just true athleticism from Burrow to save that play.
What is Scott Peters, the offensive line coach, and Zach Taylor thinking as they were on the flight, headed back from Cleveland yesterday, because I've never seen a quarterback get sacked on 3 consecutive plays on a 3 and out when the game is on the line. I never saw that until yesterday.
You know, I'm not too critical of the pass protection that they had against the Browns. All right, Myles Garrett won twice. You tip your cap there. Yep. One of those plays, I want to say, yes, there was one play where the Bengals, they got some work to do, which is that play where there was a game. It broke through. It looked like someone was maybe out of position. They let a free runner kind of break through. The Browns won that
by the name of Myles Garrett come through. Yeah. The free runner was Myles Garrett.
That exposed some rules that the Bengals certainly have to clean up. But that was one play. On the whole, Burrow felt clean, I guess, aside from that one drive. I give them a lot of credit for having Dalton Risner being ready to play. That was kind of the under-the-radar storyline of the game for me. A guy who wasn't in pads in training camp all summer, who was working out, but was, as we like to say, on his couch, to then come and play that much NFL football in the AFC North. That was really impressive. I think it was a win for the Bengals offensive line on the day, despite those few moments that Myles Garrett reeked.
Noah Fant, huge addition. Chase Brown looks like he's going to be electric. I mean, they had him dead to right in the backfield, down on the goal line. And then next thing you know, he pulls a Houdini and escapes on a 5-yard touchdown run on that very first drive. I think he's shown that he's going to be electric in an offense that's got so many playmakers that defenses can kind of lose sight. And he's going to be able to play in space. He's going to be able to run into a light box. I think he offers an upgrade over last year, even though he was here last year. It's his second year now as a starter. And I think Noah Fant also is going to bring something to this offense. Just your thoughts on what those two guys showed you in the week 1 game against the Cleveland Browns.
The big feature story that I was ready to write after that first series, that now I won't just because the offense shut down, but I really do mean what I'm about to say. This offense has wrinkles and versatility and variety. Like, the run game looked different. Like the run
Yes, it
game,
did.
clearly there's been some evolution here schematically, and then factor into how they're using tight ends, add in the versatility that Noah Fant brings to the table.
Yeah.
They've got something here. That again, all right, they had 2 yards of carry on the game. Bad game, should be better, needs to be better. But I think they have some ideas here. And then Chase Brown, I mean, we all know how good he is.
Yeah, I think you talked about some things. The way that the Cleveland Browns dominated time of possession, they held the ball and kept Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins sitting over on the bench. It's hard for offenses to get rhythm when you don't have a lot of offensive snaps. I mean, let's face it. And the longer you're sitting on the bench, I always say the best defense against any great offense is to keep the quarterback standing next to the head coach over on the sideline. And we saw a lot of those shots of Joe Burrow sort of mulling over, the laptop, looking at the plays, waiting to get back on the field. And because they didn't get a lot of at-bats, meaning possessions and plays on offense, it was hard for them to get that kind of rhythm. When they did have the ball earlier in that first half, I think they scored on 2 of their 3 possessions in the first half. They just didn't have it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second half, kind of got away from them. And then you got to give credit to Jim Schwartz and the Cleveland Browns defense as well, because those guys get paid too. Look, have you ever seen a game where a guy missed an extra point and then a guy missed a field goal at point blank range with the game on the line to give the game over to the Cincinnati Bengals? Darren Simmons had to be thanking his lucky stars, because we have the right kickers, but the Cleveland Browns clearly did not have the right kicker.
Zach Taylor said too that factored into his decision on 4th and 1 on the Bengals' final series. They could have gone for it. They could have tried to win and end the game right there. But Zach was thinking, and he said this, like, the fact that the Browns had just missed 2 kicks was probably going to be factoring into Cleveland's thinking on the ensuing drive, and that was a part of the decision to punt it down the field. Give the ball back to the Browns, and another moment where special teams kind of skewed in the right direction and gave the Bengals a little bit more of an edge over Cleveland.
I just thought it was absolute phenomenal. Cincinnati Bengals special teams came through in a rather lucky fashion, but sometimes you need a little luck to win. The defense came through in a little lucky fashion because the ball went off the hand of receivers into the hands of Geno Stone, but Geno caught it into the hands of DJ Turner, but he caught it. That tells you execution is a byproduct of preparation. It's plain as simple as that. You don't necessarily get lucky as much as you do. You become fortunate because the opportunity presented itself, right? And then it's your job to execute when the opportunity arrived. And the ability to come down with those interceptions for Geno Stone and DJ Turner turned out to be really big. What's your takeaway from what you saw in the real first look, the full picture of what Al Golden is as a defensive coordinator and how he can make the Bengals defense better?
The Bengals defense had some mistakes. There were moments where it felt like they needed more pressure. There were plays that Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner just lost one-on-one. There were a few one-on-one matchups lost at linebacker. Like, stuff happened. But you know what? On the whole, they played clean. They ran the plays. They executed the scheme. There were no big busts. There was not that one big crazy play where it's like, man, what happened? Like, how'd that guy end up all the way on his own island down here? And they tackled pretty well. And that's what they brought Al Golden in to do, just to clean things up. It's going to be a long process getting this defense to be what it really is going to have to be at the end of the day. But the fact that the defense didn't beat itself was a true step in the right direction and a reflection of kind of what the first step with Al Golden was expected to be.
It's now time for our look ahead segment as we look ahead to week 2 in the Cincinnati Bengals home opener against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Hunter and Travis Lawrence is coming to town. And of course, our look ahead segment is brought to us by Antoinette France at Sipsey Klein Realty. All you got to do is use the QR code that you see at the bottom of the screen for all of your real estate needs in the tri-state area. Of course, this lovely lady, Antoinette France at Sipsey Klein, she knows the city better than anyone else. She is the playmaker for all of the players and for all of your real estate needs. Jacksonville Jaguars coming to town. They got a win yesterday over the Carolina Panthers. Travis Hunter is going to play both ways. I want to see him try to cover T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But this guy can play wide receiver. He's going to play on the defensive side of the ball. Did that in yesterday's game. Your thoughts as you think about Jacksonville coming to town? Cincinnati Bengals have an opportunity to get off to a 2-0 start, Charlie.
Well, this is going to be a big test for the corners. And I was talking about just a second ago, kind of what we saw from the corners in week one. But the degree of difficulty with just the pure athleticism and talent that Jacksonville brings to the wide receiver position on the outside. Mm-hmm. It's also another offense with some schematic similarities and identity parallels with what the Bengals do. I think they're going to try to get their receivers in space, isolate some matchups, and see if they can win and look for them to win. And the Bengals corners have to be able to make those plays. That's going to be a big spotlight focus for me heading into this week against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I don't think people should think about Jacksonville Jaguars. This is an easy win. That's not why I mentioned 2-0. Clearly, we have a chance to go 2-0 if we win this game, but it's not going to be easy. Liam Cohen, as you well know, is the new head coach in Jacksonville. He had been with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just 1 year ago when he was the offensive coordinator, helped resurrect Baker Mayfield's career. Bucky Irvin was the rookie running back last year that went over 1,000 yards rushing. And yesterday, Liam Cohen for Jacksonville dialed up 32 run plays. Jacksonville rushed for over 200 yards in the game. Travis Etienne had 143 rushing yards. So what do I mean by that? Liam Cohen wants to run the ball. He also wants to take shot plays in the receiving game because Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those LSU guys that knows Jamar very well. He knows Joe Burrow and played with Jaden Daniels at LSU. These guys can light it up running the ball and throwing the ball. So what are your expectations there? Liam Cohen, who gets off the bus wanting to use the run to set up the pass.
It's a Bengals defense that's going to have to play another clean game. It's going to be thrown more at it schematically and again, just talent-wise than they were last week. And they're going to have to continue to tackle. They're going to have to continue to execute the system. They're going to continue to have to, prevent those coverage mistakes or those busted plays that were a part of their identity in 2024. And in that way, they can build off what they did last Sunday.
You think Joe Burrow, after saying he's throwing it as well as anybody, he's felt good? I thought Joe looked great on the first drive of the game. I thought he looked great in the first half, to be honest with you. Defenses, they get paid too. But I got to believe that the offense, those playmakers on the Cincinnati Bengals offense, including the play caller himself and Zach Taylor, that this is one of those weeks that they want to come out and solidify who they are and the kind of offense that they want to be. I understand Zach Taylor challenged them last week to say, we got to get off to a fast start, just scoring, which they did on the first drive, because they want to play with a lead because they believe that sets their defense up for success better than anything else.
The game did feel different after the Bengals took the lead yesterday. Like there was something to that, which is a part of the identity, or not identity, and not to say that it's a philosophy to try to play with the lead either. Everyone would like to play with the lead. Right. But in 2024, you saw the Bengals in a lot of spots where they were down and the game script necessitated Joe Burrow to throw the ball 50 times a game. And they have made significant tangible changes. How do we not do that this season? How can you take some of that pressure off him, the line, and the passing game? And continuing to build on that's going to be a critical part of this team becoming what it wants to be.
It's going to be critical, too, that the Bengals have balance within their offense. As you well know, I think Zach Taylor has not gone out and promoted this externally, but internally, the Bengals want to be more of a balanced attack, not putting as much on Joe Burrow, as you said, but leaning into the run game with Chase Brown. He's an explosive player that if he's given more opportunities, more at-bats, if you will, this guy's going to produce a lot of plays within the offense. What say you?
Sorry, say that again.
Chase Brown, he's going to produce a lot more plays, explosive plays in the run game. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, look at what they did just to open this game on Sunday. They were featuring Chase Brown. And that kind of shows you everything you need to know about him. They had all summer and all winter too to come up with that game plan and that philosophy. And I think you started to see the foundation get laid as well for they split Chase Brown out some. And I know Carson Schwessinger broke this play up, but there was a high leverage play in that game where they had just Chase Brown run a route and try to feature him. That didn't work, but Chase Brown can certainly do that. And that's something the Bengals are going to try to build upon.
Yeah, they're going to build upon this offense. I expect more fireworks week 2 against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. This is going to be a fun game. Cincinnati Bengals have a chance to get off to that 2-0 start and get off to the fast start that they've been talking about so that they can have a more successful 2025 season. Charlie, great stuff from you. We appreciate you stopping by and joining us every single week right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast presented by FanDuel. We want to thank you for joining us also. We look forward to seeing everyone again next week.